Change is surely going to come and has begun. We live in a time of change. Yeah, it made me a little bit verklempt. Kind of lost it because that was a song in my youth. We used to sing along with Sam Cooke, driving down the street and hoping it would change. And we're still struggling with it. But I believe the light is pushing up the darkness, and the darkness is just revealed to be healed. And it's great to be alive at this time. It's a wonderful time to be alive, a very important time. Very important for folks like you to be together and to validate your worth and your wholeness, our spiritual heritage and our roots. It's important to be in community in times like this. You can't just be out there alone. You need support. So we welcome that, and we welcome everyone here. This month, I've been teaching about some of the exemplary human beings who gave us our roots. You know, this teaching didn't arise in a vacuum. It came out of a discernible truth that has been resurfacing down through the ages. The ancient Hindus understood it, and the Buddhists. Jesus taught it, and many great people have attempted to bring it forth, and it has been suppressed again and again and again. But as I've said every week this month, it's out now and it's not going anywhere. It's part of the change. So it's a modern articulation of an ancient and eternal truth. When I was in ministerial training, we talked about what actually is it, and we kind of agreed that it's what is called panentheism. And it's a constructed word composed of the English equivalents of the Greek term pan, meaning all, en, meaning in, and theism, meaning God. So panentheism considers God and the world to be interrelated, with the world being in God and God being in the world. And that's what we mean when we say God is within, when we say God is our source, and we express our source by individualizing it, by using its intelligence. And furthermore, panentheism says God is greater than the universe, that it's actually behind the universe. God is being the universe. So that's our premise for our teaching, that what we call God is more, it's not an anthropomorphic figure. It is something beyond our comprehension, but it's something that we can feel as presence, and it is something that we can observe in action throughout this universe. The universe and everything in it is the physical evidence of an incredible intelligence revealing itself in a myriad of and spectacular array of forms. So today we get acquainted with a man who, in the words of William James, now William James was a very respected author, and I believe he was also a religious leader. Hello? And he said about Thomas Troward's book, The Edinburgh Lectures, he said, far and away the ablest statement of new thought I have ever heard. Far and away, the ablest statement of new thought I have ever heard. So we study his writings because he had the most influence over Ernest Holmes, who founded this teaching called The Science of Mind. The Science of Mind and Spirit. Troward was born in Ceylon, India in 1847 to English parents, and then he was sent back to England to go to school, and he completed his schooling there and returned to India to take the Indian Civil Service examination. And upon taking the exam, he found that one of the subjects was metaphysics, and it was left for the end of the examination. He had no preparation for this. He had never studied metaphysics. He had no knowledge of what books he should have read on the subject. So he meditated upon it in the early hours of the morning and filled in the paper with his own speculations. The examiner, on reading it, was amazed and said, "What textbook did you use for this paper?" And he said, "I wrote it out of my head." And the examiner said, "Well, young man, your head is no common one, And if I'm not mistaken, we shall hear from you again. And of course, we've heard from him again and again and again. You know, all the great minds, and that includes you, who found this truth, and those of them who sparked movements, Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad and all of them, they did so from within themselves. They didn't read books. You know, I love the question that Emerson asked, who taught Shakespeare to write? It's something within that comes out when we express it. So you can read about his life by Googling him, but today I want to share with you the most exciting and liberating ideas that came from him. When I first came into this teaching and took this class, I might have been involved a couple of years because you have to take year one before you can take Trord. His writing just opened my heart. And it's very interesting that I use those words because he's so intellectually sharp. He says so brilliant intellectually, and yet it opens your heart because the ideas he presents trigger a memory, a soul memory of truth. We know this truth. We know this is true, what he teaches. So let me give you some of these examples. One of my favorite sections is in the very beginning of the book, and he wrote something like this. There's a reason why a boy prefers a fox terrier for a pet to a goldfish. And why is the boy an advance over the dog? It has to do with degrees of livingness, and these are very important words for us in this teaching. Degrees of livingness are the ability to use intelligence to affect the environment. A good example of that is a 2-year-old who has discovered the power of no and has discovered that she can affect her environment, right? She can make people do things, laugh, smile, get upset, whatever. She discovers her power. And a goldfish doesn't possess that ability, nor does a plant. A dog does somewhat, and most mammals do. But the human being has the most developed use of intelligence, even though we sometimes underutilize it. But Troward called this ability to use intelligence degrees of livingness. Not one is better than the other. You know, Emerson talks about how, and so does Troward actually, how the flea, the mouse, and the elephant are all God expressing. They're all perfect in and of themselves, but some have more use of their natural intelligence than others. They can affect their environment more. That's how we assess it, okay? So it's not better or less. It's not higher or lower. It's the capacity to use intelligence. So by extension, we can see that there is livingness in a rock, a tree, a lobster. You know, any life form whatsoever has livingness in it. It indicates a degree of consciousness. People say a rock has consciousness. It has enough consciousness to be a rock and to maintain itself as a rock. A tree has enough consciousness to completely express treeness, right? All right, so everything has the intelligence of the universal mind, or what the world calls God, within it for a specific purpose. So what's the purpose of humans? To affect their environment, to create a world, to live in it, to express, to invent and discover and make the world different than it was before. That's our ability and our capacity. And what we're really doing is expressing the potential of the quantum field, the field of all possibilities. So we can easily see it, if you think of it this way, that everything has consciousness, that everything has some use of intelligence, and that we seem to have a very high degree of use of it, that we can see that our thoughts, our beliefs, our personal take on reality, our expectations, our desires are a use of intelligence. Would you agree? Your belief is a use of intelligence, yes? Your desire is a use of intelligence. Perceive something and decide that would be something you would like to see in your life. It's a use of your mind and your intelligence. So if we go back to panentheism, we are using the intelligence of God. I love what Marianne Williamson said once, that when we think, we are using the same power that created the universe. the same power that created the universe. We are individualizing it, and we are expressing it in our own way, and that's the great unconditional love, that you can do anything you want with it, and there's no judgment. So Troward then wrote thousands of words in his many books to advise us to think beyond the average, the ordinary, the collective, to think for yourself. Now, hasn't every great teacher, spiritual or otherwise, said something like that? Be yourself, Emerson, be and not seem. To thine own self be true, and then thou canst be false to anyone. Shakespeare. Everyone suggests this. Psychologists do. Your grandmother did. Be yourself, express yourself, know yourself, become self-aware. Don't copy, don't imitate, don't let people tell you who you are. Be yourself. So you hear echoes of Emerson, who said, hitch your wagon to a star, think beyond the ordinary, think beyond the law of averages. Get your bloated nothingness out of the way of the divine circuits. It means the little thinking, the limited thinking. You hear echoes of Quimby, who we talked about the first week of the month. Mind is cause and mind is cure. So although Troward was an intellectual genius, he was also a mystic. He loved his flower garden, and he spent hours in his garden. He was an excellent oil painter. He had a studio, and he turned out all kinds of wonderful artwork. He was very balanced, and he would go into meditation for hours at a time. He called it his trance. He would go into a trance, and then when he came out, he had all these new insights, and he'd write them down or talk about them and maybe make a new painting. But he was extremely balanced. So was Ernest Holmes. So was Emerson. All of them brilliant minds, but all of them mystics, and in some way artistic and expressive in that way. All of them loving and kind. Really astonishing sense of using all of our traits to create a human being that did great things, can do great things, because they're not inhibited by little thinking. They're not held back by the tyranny of their own mind, if you want to put it that way. They've been set free. Buddha, did you ever see the little Buddha, or did you read Hesse's book, Siddhartha, about Buddha leaving all of his worldly possessions behind, all of his wealthy upbringing, and going out seeking the answer? Why do people suffer? And coming up with it, with the erroneous use of intelligence is how I see it. Jesus did the same thing, 40 days in the desert. Einstein used to do it. Einstein used to go into a kind of a state and draw on his intuition for his answers to his mathematical problems. Almost everyone who creates something wonderful has pulled it from deep within themselves. It's like Ernest Holmes says, if you want to heal a condition, you must turn entirely away from the condition and take your mind where it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in spirit. And this is kind of what Troward said too. He said, the distinctive quality of spirit is thought, and the distinctive quality of matter is form. Consciousness precedes form, intelligence creates form, but it is not bound by time and space. So the infinite is revealed as the finite, but it's still the infinite. That when we go into what is our 21st century prayer, I call it the evolution of prayer, which is spiritual mind treatment. We are taking our attention away from the condition that exists in time and space to a place of the field of awareness where it does not exist, it's not real. So if it's a physical problem, we go back into that field in our own little, it's not a trance, it's just a use of mind. Or we say in spirit, in God, in the truth, there's no such thing as disease. There's only wholeness. There's only vitality. There's only that energy, the one being the all, and is now vitalized as my body. So we don't try to heal something. God is not in the healing business. It's in the revealing business. Very huge distinction from other teachings like this, or there really isn't anything like this. So we go within our own field of intelligence, knowing we are one with that universal mind, and declare what must be true, and is so in that field of potential, alive now and quivering with energy, just awaiting our direction to come through us by means of us. Now, here's the thing. If nothing else today, this is the one you have to remember, because you hear it all the time, but this is coming from Thomas Troward. The most important words in any language are, I am. That's from Troward. We say it here all the time. The most important words in any language are I am, because what we add onto them is our use of God's intelligence, our use of the universal mind, our use of an infinite potential. So my next favorite part is when he said, the higher mode of intelligence controls the lower. This is what is meant by dominion, which was horribly misunderstood and used to vandalize nature and cause a whole lot of other problems. But change is coming. It is also what is the basis of racism, sexism, all the homophobic isms, any mindset that says one human is better than another kind of human, that comes from that misunderstanding of Scripture. Dominion means we affect the environment. We must make wise choices. And we're all intelligent. No one is more intelligent. We use intelligence differently, but that doesn't make us better than anybody. Okay, so let's look at what it means metaphysically and practically. The conscious mind, the thinking mind, is a higher mode of intelligence than the subconscious mind, which is a collection of memories and impressions and ideas that we've held on to over the years. But it's the holder of information, and it has a very good purpose, so that if you need to go out and ride a bike and you haven't done so in 40 years, you still can. It holds information that it thinks you'll need. Unfortunately, it also holds information it thinks you'll need that you really don't want. I'm thinking of an example. I had a woman in one of my classes who was having a problem with obesity, and she said, every night in the middle of the night, I wake up at 4 o'clock and I have to go get something to eat. And we talked about that, and she began to realize it was a deeply buried memory from her babyhood, and that her mother often ignored her when she was crying in the crib. You can retrieve this stuff if you want to, but in our teaching, we say you don't really have to find out what it was. You just have to put in a new, bigger idea. But once she got in touch with that, she realized she didn't need that anymore. And that habit shifted, it changed, and she began to normalize her weight. It was a really fascinating thing to watch. So the conscious mind then is the director. It is greater than the subconscious mind. Our culture taught us it was the other way around, that you can't help it. Your subconscious is going to make you do stuff. It's going to make you, be angry when you shouldn't be. Only if you're not taking care of it. Only if you're not giving it the right ideas. Then you get that triggering sense of stuff happening in your life. Anybody ever been triggered? Of course we have. But it never has anything to do with what's happening now. If it's not love, it has nothing to do with now. Seriously. Because we can make corrections, we can express ourselves when we need to with discernment, but you don't have to be angry to do it. You don't have to feel attacked to do it. That's coming from old stuff. Okay, so we were talking in class the other night about the ego's role is to maintain the status quo. And the ego is trying to protect what you believe about yourself. And so when you feel attacked, it gives you something to do about that. And the ego always perceives attack. It could be the look on someone's face. It's like, she didn't say hi to me today. The tone of voice, right away, you're in it, right? So the conscious mind needs to manage that stuff. And this is where self-talk comes in psychologically. You tell yourself, that's not what I really believe. I don't need to react that way. I can respond from a higher level, a higher use of my intelligence. It's a practice. It's not easy. It's a practice. So in speaking of our own evolution as a species, Troward wrote, "The progress towards higher intelligence is always in the direction of narrowing down the margin of accident and taking the individual more and more out of the law of averages." In the book, he talks about how life produces millions of fish, certain species, but most of them die off before they reach maturity. That's nature's way. It does that with a lot of things, but with the human being, it says it narrows it down so that we're not living under those laws of averages. We're living from a more specific relationship with Spirit. That's a really wow statement. It's like the law of averages works for us automatically when we're not thinking consciously, when we're allowing our subjective mind to run things. The law of averages works automatically in the human race for survival. Survival's one degree of livingness. Thrival is quite another, right? Quite another. So survival is unconscious. It just happens. You live, you reproduce, maybe. You have some experiences, and then you pass on. Thrival is while you're here, you are aware that you're affecting your environment. And so you are creating a life that actually works for everyone. That's what Dr. King did. You know, he had a realization in the middle of his quest for equality that he was really looking to help the whole human race. He included everybody. And that's the natural evolution of intelligence, is to realize you're not an isolated individual, and some people aren't isolated from others. We are all one beautiful race of people, human race, and that we all share in the bounty of this life, and that there's enough of everything for everybody. There's enough of everything to go around a million times, right? Because it's created from mind, because it's created from consciousness. So if we want to thrive and invent and create, we do not rely on anything other than our own words, which are, yeah, thank you. Knowing it is the power individualized. You simply have to read the Edinburgh lectures. I mean, you take this class when I offer it. It is so amazingly awakening. It has no jargon in it, no religious language in it. That's what I loved about it. Because when I came into this teaching, I don't want to hear anything religious. I just wasn't interested. But I was so fascinated by his logical, sequential moves towards all of his conclusions. I've always felt he should be taught before homes, especially in today's world where people come in and they're much more aware of this kind of thinking than they were when I came in 1975. Because he really influenced Holmes to a huge degree. Holmes even said, Ernest Holmes said, that he got the logical rationale for spiritual mind treatment from Troward. And he called it a logical movement of mind along specific lines in order to bring about a specific result. So we're using our mind very intentionally, and rather, we're setting up a new series of cause and effect when we do spiritual mind treatment. Now, that's actually the purpose of prayer, except prayer was based on an erroneous model of the universe. It simply was wrong. And everything in life is about our take on reality, what we think is true, what we think we have a right to expect, what we think is the source of all. It's all about how do I perceive the universe? So this old model, which served humanity for a long time, is outdated. One which had God separate from us and hard to reach, doling out rewards and punishment. And it's so outdated, so out of sync with how things come into being, it's no wonder that younger people just can't accept it. They just won't go there. And how different our world would be if we all knew the secret. God is being you. Say this out loud. God is being me. God is being me. See, that's a very provocative thing to think, isn't it? When you've been taught all your life that God is a man in the sky somewhere, a white man in the sky somewhere, and you're not you're probably not one of his favorites. It's superstitious stuff. And people anthropomorphized it because it was easier to relate to than an abstraction. But now we understand better. We understand science more. We're interested in quantum physics and fields and energies, and we're not afraid of an abstraction because we know it's a presence that we can actually feel within ourselves. It's not out there. It's here. It's a huge idea to absorb, but one worth considering. So God is being me, God is being you, God is being everything. It's individualizing as us, personifying itself as us, and our mind is its conduit for expression. You start the process with those two words, I am. I'm going to read you something just directly from the book. This morning I was looking through it and I thought, I don't know if I want to read the entire thing, but I want you to get a sense of his clarity and the way his mind flowed. He's talking about the infinite is a universal intelligence in the midst of which we float as a living ocean. Intelligence without individual personality, but which in producing us concentrates itself into the personal individualities which we are. What should be the relation of such an intelligence towards us? Not one of favoritism, not any more than the law can it respect one person above another. For itself is the root and support of each alike. Not one of refusal to our advances, for without individuality, it can have no personal object of its own to conflict with. And since it is itself the origin of all individual intelligence, it cannot be shut off by an inability to understand. By the very terms of its being, therefore, this infinite, underlying, all-producing mind must be ready immediately to respond to all who realize their true relation to it. I think that's where I'll stop. It's about realization. It's re-educating our mind. It is not trashing what was. It's saying it evolves. It has evolved. Spiritual mind treatment is the evolution of prayer. It's not that we don't respect prayer as it has been. It's that we have moved beyond because of what we now know. And so it's extremely important that we let ourselves keep our minds open to this truth and see what we can do with it. Let's go back. Let's do spiritual mind treatment right now. You can recognizing the one life, the one mind, the one power, the one presence is all there is. There's nothing else. It is the only thing that is producing this universe and everything in it. It is pure intelligence and absolute love. It has no opposition. It is not in conflict with anything. It is the only power there is, projecting itself as the universe, as everything in it and beyond. Nameless, formless, birthless, deathless, and yet it takes birth, it takes form, it pushes the forms forward in change. That power and that presence lives in each one of us, individualized as our soul, our true self, as that place in us that knows and knows that it knows, that I am one with something beyond my comprehension, and yet I know it's present. I feel it when I breathe, when my heart beats. I can feel the vibration of it in my body. And once we know this, we can never go back to believing we are victims of anything. We are the change makers. We are the ones we've been waiting for. This is the time. We are the people. And so today, let's affirm within ourselves in our own way that we achieve a higher level of livingness through meditation, spiritual mind treatment, education, community support, affirmation. That we take charge today and every day coming, every moment of our conscious mind, that we fill our mind with thoughts of wholeness, beauty, truth, love, joy, peace, power, vitality, supply, radiance, prosperity. That we see this as the potential of all human beings, that we are now in that place to bring it forward. And so each one of us does it in our own unique individual way. We are a living demonstration of what Jesus said. These things which I do, you can do and more. It is the great promise. It has been said again and again and again. Are we listening now? Let's say yes today. Yes to what's trying to happen in this world. Intelligence revealed as a world that works for everyone. And so I know that each one of us has been blessed this morning in some way. There has been some kind of an awakening, a shift in insight. We may not know what it is immediately, but it will inform us, lead us, guide us, and direct us, and prompt us to act in ways that reveal the presence of God. And so for this and so much more, we let our lives be and not seem. And we simply say, it is done, and so it is. Thank you.